sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. This is Rabbi Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. This week is the World Series, the Los Angeles Dodgers versus the Toronto Blue Jays. The hometown Dodgers are looking to go back to Toronto and hopefully win the World Series. But this week we are joined by somebody else who is involved in the baseball world, not in the athletic side, but on the faith side. I'm really, really excited to welcome Pastor Jeff Boettcher from Christ Church in South Philadelphia and the chaplain of the Philadelphia Phillies. Pastor Boettcher, it's so wonderful to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
So this is a little dangerous what I'm about to do, but we're in Los Angeles. It's Dodger time. But for those of you who know me, my parents are from Philadelphia, and I have been a Phillies fan my entire life. So just the moment, Rabbi on the Sidelines, we're going to go for Phillies right here. So that's
wow,
for you,
there
Pastor.
you go. I appreciate that. Yeah, you might, I don't know how dangerous that is out there in LA, but I appreciate the support. That's great.
Yes. So actually, Phillies have been a part of my own history. And so in Jewish tradition, we say two words, Kodesh and Chol. It means sacred and ordinary. And your job is actually both. I like to say, when we're talking offline, that if I wasn't doing what I would do, and I love to be doing what you're doing. So when a chaplain becomes available in MLB, let me know for that first rabbinic position.
There you go.
But let's just talk about first the sacredness in terms of people often ask me when you're on an airplane, why do you want to be a rabbi? So Pastor Jeff, why do you want to be a pastor?
That's a great question. So, I think for me, it's actually born a lot from my personal story. So, when I was in high school, went through some experiences that kind of honestly woke me up to the ugliness of myself. And so, what do you do with that? How do you grapple with that? And so, very grateful that I came into contact with some Christians who really introduced me to the idea of Jesus and this concept of forgiveness and God's unconditional love, and how, one of the ideas that's central to Christianity is that God does not overlook our sin, but he actually judges it. But since he loves us, he came to be that substitute for us, right? So I think very similar to, I'm sure that, the Jewish understanding of sacrifice, right? So we believe that Christ is that ultimate sacrifice for us. So I just found a lot of meaning and significance in that. Really honestly changed my life, and probably rescued me from a lot of harmful things. And so it's this idea if God can do something in my life like that, news as good as too good to keep to myself. And so I just very much wanted to be about spreading it, sharing it, seeking to give this good message to everyone that I possibly could. And so, so that's how I kind of felt an initial call to really just, I would say, be a evangelist, if you will, spreading the good news of the, what the Bible's, from our perspective all about. And so, it's kind of thing there. And then, started a ministry in college where I just started teaching the Bible, sharing this message. And then from there, a group came, then you start after bringing structural organization and leadership. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of like being a pastor. Maybe it's something I'd want to do. And so that's really, I'd say in college that the sense of pastoral ministry kind of first came on my radar. But I was actually given some good advice. It was good for me. One of my mentors said hey, if you want to do that, that's great. Go get a job, a regular job. You talk about the ordinary, go get an ordinary job. Don't go straight from, college into the ministry, learn to relate to people who are going to be in your congregation. So I went out and was a copier salesman for 4 or 5 years, and actually really enjoyed that. But the idea of wanting to be in ministry never left. And so after that, I ended up doing an internship at my local church, and then got the education. And, now here, that was about 12 years ago. Here I am a pastor for the last 12 years. So
let's go to the ordinary, which is sports, but we're actually going to get to how sports is actually as sacred as our pulpits. And so what was your sports life growing up? Were you a fan? Were you an athlete? What did that look like growing up?
Yeah, so I've always been in and around the Philadelphia area, and so you can't be in Philly without being an avid.
No, you cannot.
Just part of what it means. And so, I grew up, bleeding, Eagles green and Phillies red, and loved. The Sixers, were very formative. So that whole, run, especially the Allen Iverson years, that was very formative time in my life. And
I'm actually reading Allen Iverson's book right now, Misunderstood. Fascinating moments of faith. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't gotten it yet, but I do know actually the chaplain for the Sixers. So I'm looking forward to reading it because we've shared some experiences from that. But anyway, so love sports. Grew up playing sports. I was actually more primarily a basketball player. That was the main sport that I enjoyed playing. So actually, the ironic thing is I've actually never played organized baseball in my life. I didn't even play Little League. I was scared of the ball. So besides having to catch my dad in the backyard, that's about the extent. My brother was actually a really good baseball player, but yeah, that was never me. So yeah, so I was really just fan, but love to play. You know, I did play organized basketball, but then, you know, football, volleyball, all kinds of sports. So I do, you know, it's been a big part of my life. My dad was a basketball coach for many years. So sports has always been kind of a big part of our family.
And so let's talk about actually the Philly fans before we get to the sacredness, because there's a sacredness about that as well. I've been to an Eagles game before at the link, many Phillies games, been to a Sixer game. There's an energy in there. What is the sacredness of being a Philadelphia fan? And specifically, we talk about our stadiums as sanctuaries. When you enter a stadium, how do you see the sanctuary and our congregations and our fandom as linked?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's it's really interesting. I think when you walk into those spaces, you see how God has created us to be worshipers. You know, there's this sense that like people are there, and they're there, especially in Philadelphia, see this on full display. They're there with all their emotions, fully engrossed, fully engaged. You know, they are, you know, that's what worship is, like honoring something. They are honoring what's happening on that field. And so you really do see that spirit of worship come out.
It's interesting. I just want to say,
yeah,
not worshiping the players, but honoring the experience on the field. Very different, right?
yeah, absolutely. So, and that's what I was going to say. There's actually you know, there's a place where that can then kind of slip into idolatry, right? And so you got to be careful with that, right? You know, and so I think, you know, we're actually, as a church, we're recently going through the book of Judges, and, you know, idolatry is such a major theme in that book. And the way we can all do that, right? We can all take God's good gifts, instead of using them to direct us to worship the giver, we actually just terminate with the gift, and we, you know, we make the gift the idol. And so I think that, you know, certainly can be a temptation, I'm sure, for many fans. And I think that's one of the things as a fan, how do you enjoy the gift? But what I love is when people can enjoy the gift and then connect it to the God who gave the gift.
Yes.
You know, how good must God be if he can create such a good and beautiful experience? And, you know, how good must this God be if he can bring us together in community and joy and all the positive things of being a fan. You know, I think in many ways, sports, when it's at its best, is like a sign pointing beyond itself. You know, hey, look at this, and look where this is pointing. And so I think it's meant to be sportsman. Hey, you were created for joy. You were created for community. You were created to find, you know, thrill, and God gave you all that. Look at this good God who gave that to you. And so that's why I think, man, when you start making those connections, I think it actually adds an even deeper level to your fandom in many ways.
And is there a spiritual connection between an 18-inning game in Los Angeles? That was tough. That was tough.
Man. Did you stay up for it all?
I did. My dad's in Philly, and he was up till 3 a.m. So I only had to do midnight. But that was a religious experience, as definitely the fans that were there had told me, and many of our congregations was actually there as I was watching on Facebook. So I want to ask about, we talked about the joy and the experience and the honor and the worship, but often people come to faith through tragedy, through difficult circumstances. Dave Sims, who's now the voice of the New York Yankees, one of my first guests on the show, and I said, is there faith and prayer in baseball? And he's like, well, what about the guy, you know, yes, the guy who hits the home run. So Guerrero hits the home run and Harper hits the home run. And, you know, I thank God. But the person who creates the error and loses the game, and a lot of it is written specifically with the Phillies Dodgers, that really difficult play with Orion. And what he went through in that circumstance was really hard. And I actually enjoyed a lot of the articles saying, like, let's give empathy to this mistake, because we all make mistakes. What does that look like on the field, and your role as a chaplain, comforting and also uplifting, to talk about there's another hope for tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the interesting things about baseball is that it involves so much failure. I mean, if you strike out 7 out of 10 times, which is, you know, 70%, that's a lot, of failure.
You're hitting 300.
You're headed for the Hall of Fame, you know? And so there's so much failure that these guys have to grapple with on a, you know, on a daily basis. And I do think that, you know, faith can be a major aspect of finding comfort. You know, that's one of the things we'll talk about a lot is, yes, give God glory for the victory, but also give God glory for the defeat. You know, he was with you either way. You know, I don't think that God makes one team win and the other team lose. You know, I think he cares a lot more about the heart posture of the players. And so, you know, we talk a lot about, like, give God honor by, when you have success, attributing to success, but also give God honor by when you go through suffering, leaning on him and trusting your faith. That shows, that honors God too. And so God can be just as honored in victory as he can in defeat. And I think that actually allows a certain sense. If your goal is just victory, then man, that's actually a pretty fragile goal, because at the end of the day, there's only one winner.
Exactly.
But if your goal is more your character and how you honor God, well, then no matter what the scoreboard says, you can actually rise to that moment. So even that moment you referenced, with one of the things I think I was just very proud of was how many players, you watch that moment, immediately, JT's immediately out there consoling him, on the bench, Wes Wilson has his arm around him. So many guys coming out afterwards in public support, like, hey, we win as a team, we lose as a team. This wasn't all on him. I think that shows a strength of character, just as much as if, whoever wins going to win the World Series and say, hey, I just want to thank God for giving me this opportunity. That's great to do. But I think also, like, there's a strength of character that's shown, in the defeat. And I think faith allows you to do that, to have that higher sense of purpose.
And so what does the day-to-day chaplain job look like in the major leagues? And I also want to distinguish between players and coaches, because I'm imagining that the spiritual aspect of the coach is very different than the player aspect. So it's game day, your 3-game series against the Dodgers in Philadelphia. What do you do as a chaplain?
Yeah. So the role kind of changes, I would say, in season versus playoffs. So in season, there's so many games. So I'm not there for every single game in season.
Happy to fill in.
Yeah. No, what we do is we'll do like a weekend like service. And so I'll have a message. We'll have a time of prayer. So almost like coming to like for us, like a church service. We're really trying to replicate that for the players who really can't get out. I mean, that's one of the things about really any professional sport, particularly baseball, is that these guys have no opportunity to be in any kind of spiritual community outside their team, because they're just always at the field. I mean, a baseball player's at the field, 12 p.m. to 12 midnight every day. And so,
I heard that on Sundays, and maybe correct me if I'm incorrect, on Sundays that there's no batting practice for the public because they're in chapel. Is that correct or no?
So Sundays is generally a time where there's generally going to be chapel. I don't know if every team would structure it fully that way. I would say
interesting.
I would love to say that's a great article. You can go with that, but I think it's probably more to do with the fact that it's a getaway day game and
got it. Okay.
Later day, but that is when we do. Yeah, that is when we do chapel predominantly. Some guys will do it on Saturday as well, depending on when. It's really when the players want it. So it's usually either Saturday or Sunday, and we'll do a chapel, and then we'll do like a midweek Bible study. And so we'll get the players together, and/or coaches, and that'll be a time of just working through a book of the Bible, talking about life. That's more, chapel service is more like a preaching and like kind of like a worship experience where they're kind of more passive. And I think the Bible study is a little more of a dialogue back and forth. We're interacting together, and so that's beautiful. It's beautiful to see them interacting with each other. My wife's actually involved as well, so she'll get involved with their significant others. And doing ministry to the women. And so we'll do a Bible study together as like for married couples, and then she'll also have a separate one just for the ladies. And so because they really need it too. I mean, the guys kind of have a task at hand, and they're kind of brought together by like their common goal of the game. But these women a lot of times can be very lonely because they in a city generally it's not their hometown. They don't know anyone, and so that can be a really challenging lifestyle. So my wife does a lot to pour into them. So that's kind of the rhythms, we're there at least for those two things. Now I'm usually there for, connecting with people. I'm usually at the field maybe 4 times a week. And then the playoffs, that's definitely every game.
Every day.
And every day. And we have multiple levels of prayer. So there's pregame prayer with players, pregame prayer with the coaches. That's generally 2 different ones because they're on different schedules.
Interesting.
And that's just being around and available. Honestly, there's a lot of times it's a very stressful time for staff. Even they're working pretty hard. So, my role, I'm there primarily for the players and coaches, but I also, want to make myself available for the staff, especially staff, more the front office staff who's, down in the clubhouse. And so, we've had at different times separate chapels just for them, as well. And so, so we have kind of structured times of, prayer, and then a lot of it's just, I would say the ministry of presence, so being around and someone say, hey, can I talk to you about this? Or, hey, I got this going on. Because like life life doesn't stop, right? So
Right. Right.
all the normal things that could happen. A player has to play, a game, and they just found out that their mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer the night before, right? So they need someone to process that with. And that's
And
kind
that
of
story doesn't get to us. We just want to watch the game, but that's happening in real life, behind the scenes in those ministerial offices.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I love how you said there's worship experience, but there's also the interaction between Bible study between the players. Is there a moment either this year in your experience that a specific biblical story has resonated with the player, and then you saw them take that inspiration onto the field and make a difference?
Yeah. So I wouldn't want to, maybe share any specific names, since that's obviously their story to tell. But I think one of the things that, this year we were going through the Gospel of John, and it was really neat to see ways the guys were and their spouses were making connections between the compassion that really Christ exemplifies in that role, and how they could then as they understand that that's God's heart disposition towards them, that would then position them to show that heart towards others. So the way they're just kind of making that connection between their relationship with God and how it then shapes how they interact with other people was super encouraging to see. And the way they started then encouraging one another, the ways that, when someone went through some hard relational things, they actually used those things to navigate that.
Wow.
And so, it's deeply encouraging.
And so baseball and a sports team is also different than our congregations, because people are walking in looking for faith in our congregations. They're looking for the spoken word. They're looking for the written word. They're looking for pastoral counseling. But in baseball, they sign up to play baseball, and then faith is sort of, you walk in. So what does that look like with somebody who's maybe not of faith, not interested? How do you serve a mixed congregation through a baseball team?
That's a great question. So, everything I do is voluntary, right? So the player doesn't have to show up to prayer. They don't have to show up to the chapel service. We have a room that we use, so we're not like in the locker room, and intentionally wouldn't be so, because I think that'd be I go into locker room, just personally interact with people, but that's not where we conduct our services, because we really do want to make it an invitational thing. So I think for me, my goal is really twofold. One, I want to go in and just be against that ministry of presence, just the guys know that I care about them. I'm here for them in any way possible. So something I make a point to do in spring training is go up to each and every player. There's a lot of them in spring training. There's actually about 80 guys that'll be in the clubhouse. They're not obviously not going to make the team, but just to go up to each one, I'll say, hey, introduce myself, say my role, and just ask what's 3 things I've been praying for you and your family.
I love that.
And it's just they know that even if they don't, I found that even if people don't have necessarily a certain faith tradition, no one usually turns down prayer. And so everyone's willing to be, to pray. And so I try to do that. And then for guys who then, do make the team and are with us for the season, I'll just follow, hey man, I've been praying for you about this. How you doing? How you doing? And then it might be a short answer. Oh, I'm fine. Thank you. It might be, kind of a brush off answer, or sometimes it gets deeper. So I try to access and build that relationship through prayer. And then just being around. And it's been interesting. Just, again, the more you're around, the guys kind of see you and get more comfortable with you and know that you're not there with any agenda.
Exactly.
I'm not there asking for tickets. I'm not there asking for autographs. I'm not there asking them to hey, can you come out to my church and do X, Y, Z? They know I'm really just there to serve them. The more that happens and they build that trust. Yes, well, there's not a lot of times, they can have people that they do trust. And so, there's been, then they just decide, hey, can I talk to you about X? And they're going through something they want to, so you've been that presence. And then when they're ready, they're then able to open up the door. So that's one avenue. The other avenue is, I think one of my big roles is for the men of faith on the team, is positioning them about how to have conversations with their teammates who maybe not, might not share their perspective. And so I do think the best person to do ministry to another professional player is a professional player. They're the ones that are there all the time, on the plane, in the hotels, 24/7. They basically live together, and there's respect level there that those guys have, for one another, and a trust level there. And so I think that, part of my job is coaching those men and helping them. And so I love when guys will show up to a Bible study, hey, my teammate asked me this question, why would a good God allow so much evil to exist, right? The classic problem of evil.
I love that those questions come in the locker room. That's amazing.
Oh, it's great. And then you just okay, well, here's how to think about that. And you start walking them through it. and you're discipling that person, but then you're giving them the opportunity to then go and now give that answer back and like interact with their teammates. So I love that. I love being able to kind of, in that ways I kind of view myself as a coach. I'm not the one actually doing it. I'm on the sidelines coaching these guys about how to do it. So that's how I think about guys in the locker room. I think about, my personal relationship, just being around, but then I also think about how I can put, the guys I am close with who do know me, how can I put them in position to reach those players?
So one of those people that I know you're close with, because that's how I found you. My dad, also Rabbi Charles Sherman, Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, huge Phillies fan. Grew up Phillies fan. Actually, we grew up in Syracuse, but we'd always schlep down to the Vet and see Lenny Dykstra, Mickey Morandini, Tommy Green. Wow, that was an amazing year.
Yeah.
And he was at a game, and it was Phillies Faith Day, and he's like, "You got to find this pastor." But one of those players was J.D. Realmuto, who really shows his faith on and off the field. What does it mean to have a guy like that on the team? What does that faith look like, and how do you work with him to bring faith to MLB?
Yeah, very grateful for JT and his wife Lexi. They're phenomenal people, and to see them really kind of grow and progress even in their faith when they started to where they're at now has been tremendously amazing to see. And that event really was their, it's something we had talked about, but it really did come at their, they're the ones who made it happen. And JT used his leverage within the team to kind of bring it all about. And so proud of him for wanting to do that and to use that platform he has to do that. So I think that's, again, a guy like JT is just trying to help him think about, what are the platforms, what are the opportunities God's given you, and then how do you, step out and with courage and faith, not be someone you're not, just be who you are, open and honest. And so, and I think it's what they did at that event. I think one of the things that really impressed me about how that event ended up going was, I think JT and Lexi were just very, very real and honest. And I don't think you walked away being like impressed, like, oh wow, look at these celebrities. I think you walked away being impressed with like, oh wow, I want to know their God, like the way they know him. So actually, I think they did what needs to happen in those events. They didn't make it about themselves. They really made it about the God. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about him is he's not a on the field and off the field. He's not a look at me type guy. He's very much one, how can I, serve my team? And so whether it be like, helping helping the batters figure out plans, whether it be helping the, pitchers come with a game plan, like he's an excellent teammate. But then really living out that faith, how can I use my position to kind of point to God? And so, and his wife was right there along with him in that. And so, yeah, they're dear friends and very proud of them.
And so a lot of this that we've been speaking about is how we as preachers teach faith and bring faith into people's lives, but surrounded by athletes, high level athletes, championship level athletes every single day, you must learn something in the faith world from those athletes. So what do you get to bring back to your leadership style as a faith leader through what you actually see on the field separated from faith?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think there's a lot that I've learned from seeing how these guys handle things. And again, I think it comes back, probably we were talking about earlier, the idea of failure and seeing how quickly they don't dwell on the past, but they just move forward to the next goal. And there's actually a Bible verse where a guy named the Apostle Paul talks about it, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to lies ahead. And I think that's, it's the idea that like we can't, you can't live in the past or you'll just stay stuck and that'll grip you and paralyze you. And so I think, in ministry, not every moment is a ministry highlight. There can be hard things that we go through. There can be, and I think one of the things about, as leaders is our mistakes are usually, our mistakes sometimes can affect other people, and you never intentionally do that, but we're human and we're flawed. And so I think sometimes it's like you just live there kicking yourself like, oh man, I wish I was better. I wish, and like the reality is like, no, okay, that was a mistake. How can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? And then I can move forward to the next thing. And so that's what baseball players do. They're like, okay, let me look at that. I struck out. Let me look at what I did. Let me learn from it. Okay. I'm not now bringing that at bat into my next at bat. I'm now present in that moment. And so seeing how they can like, grow from their mistakes, but not dwell on their mistakes has been a rich lesson for me and something I'm grateful to see every day.
So a couple of baseball questions, just because we get an inside look of baseball. Ohtani, right? Babe Ruth style stuff, pitching and home runs. When you see a guy like that in person, what is that? Is that, it's like, I don't want to say godlike, but like out of this world. What does Shohei Ohtani mean to the game right now?
Yeah, I don't know if everyone understands fully what we're seeing or experiencing. I mean, it's really, you mentioned Babe Ruth. He really is the only comparable. And even that, I don't think is a full comparison. Because I don't think Babe Ruth ever necessarily pitched at the level that Ohtani can pitch. And so It really is a unique, just incredible thing. And not just, I mean, I think for the game of baseball here, but also like one of the things for me, 'cause I mean, I'll see him when he comes through town, is just the international appeal, right? And so how many of the the Japanese media just follows him all the time, and so I think it's a tremendous thing. I think he's doing a ton for the game of baseball. That I hope people are recognizing that you're experiencing something that you'll, what happened the other day? He was on base 9 times. I mean, you're never probably gonna ever see that again. You're just never gonna see that. And so I think it's an amazing thing to see. I think he's great for the game here, and then also great for the game internationally. But I also pray for him, because I think when you're on that, you're at that level, and like there's that focus, and I think particularly that level of focus, like if you're coming from another country to here, and in some ways you're representing your whole country, that's a lot of pressure.
Yep.
And so definitely pray for him a lot, that he be grounded, and he seems to be a very grounded individual. I obviously don't know him well. I'm not his chaplain, but it's really praying for his spiritual self. In that.
And the fan experience in Philly, we keep talking about, is unbelievable. One of my favorite things is actually not on the baseball field, but in the fans, and that's the Philly fanatic. Any relationship with the Philly fanatic? It always brightens spirits. What's the role of that Philly fanatic with the team, with the players? Do they pick up on that? And is there any faith connection to the fanatic?
Yeah. Man, I don't know about faith connection. That's a tough one. But as far as like, I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know if there's anything else in any major sport like the Philly fanatic. And you really have to be there to experience it. But the way he really imbibes the whole, not only the spirit of the team, the spirit of the city. It's just, I don't think there's anything more popular than any of the major, like the Philly fanatic. He's it. It's unbelievable. And I do think that when the players come in, they see that, they get that, I mean, Bryce Harper's always, he's got the Philly Fanatics cleats and all kinds of things. So, I think players who are especially going to be here for their career, they really do identify with him. They get pumped up by him. And so here, the faith lesson might be, in many ways, the Philly Fanatic is so into the game and so, into the crowd, and so, so into the players, that when you feel that level of affirmation, I do think it rises, you rise that. I think the players experience that when they feel the stadium, and they'll reference this when they feel the stadium and everyone behind them, and the Philly Fanatics leading that cheer. I think there's a certain sense of affirmation they feel that then kind of like allows them to perform at a greater level. And I think the faith connection is ultimately that's what we should experience with God. When you know that the creator of the universe is with you and for you and cheering you on, I think there's a certain strength you can draw from that.
Actually, this past year for our High Holy Day season, which was a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to do something a little different. We never got a lot of people here, and I really do have a lot of comparisons between sanctuary and stadiums, between sports and faith. It's actually called one of the sports teams' drum lines. And I said, "Do you do worship?" And they're like, "Yes, we do." So we actually called it "Starting a New Year with a New Beat." And they came in through the aisles, and it was just an amazing experience that people didn't expect. Well, sort of like the fanatic, when they felt that energy, they were able to go to the right. And I love that, affirming God's presence in our lives.
Yeah.
So one last ordinary question, then one last faith question. We're 3-2 Blue Jays Dodgers after what you've seen in both in the series and the season. Speaking to an LA audience from here, what's your prayer? What's your prayer for us as LA Dodgers fans as we go into this weekend?
Well, I was just.
If you were in the Dodgers clubhouse, what would be your message to the players right now?
I'd be encouraging the guys. Hey, listen, play the best of your ability, trust God, and leave the results ultimately up to Him. And so I think that, the main thing you should be praying and hoping for is that your team performs at the height of their ability. Right. That's what competition is about. Competition has two teams hopefully doing their best, and then one team's going to be better. And then hopefully the better team coming out on top. And so, I would love to see, the Dodgers. I know there's been talk sometimes about some of the hitters not hitting all the ways, so everyone, hitting like they should, pitching like they should. And, if you feel like you did your best and still got outperformed, then I think you can take some peace with that. So yeah, but I do think, it's a special time for you all, because Clayton Kershaw kind of his
that last night.
That what a moment that was, and what a man he's been for MLB, and he's a strong man of faith as well. And so I have the utmost respect for him. Got to know him a little bit when he's been here through Philly, and so there's a sense where being in this role, you don't necessarily support organizations, but sometimes you can invest in emotional, invest in emotional desire for players. And so I'd love to see Kershaw go out on top. Having said that, I also, Sir Anthony Dominguez was on the Phillies for a while, and so I want to see him do well for the Blue Jays. So then you feel conflicted, and so I don't have a dog in this fight. I just hope that both teams perform to their ability, and it's been a great season. Man, what a great series so far. So I'm hoping it goes to Game 7. I'll give you that. I'm praying it goes to Game 7. Yeah.
And then what is one thing that you've seen off the field from players that we don't necessarily see? In the Jewish tradition, we call them mitzvot, acts of loving kindness. I had a brother, of blessed memory, who was special needs, and I saw the fact that sports really uplifted our spirits when there were hospital visits and different things like that. What's something that you see? I don't know if you work with them off the field to do those acts of kindness, something that we don't see that you're like, wow, these are amazing human beings that do beautiful acts of kindness.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's kind of two avenues that I see that take place. First, I'm very, very proud that Aaron Nola, a tremendous man of faith, just actually won Philanthropist of the Year by Players' Choice Awards. So the players picked him as the person that they thought was the best philanthropist in the entire league. And so super proud of him being recognized by his peers. He does a lot of work with ALS, and that comes from his personal experience. His uncle actually passed away from that, unfortunately. And so, sometimes I encourage the guys like, hey, there's all kinds of opportunities they can to do good. It's where does your heart bleed, and give yourself to that. So instead of doing a bunch of little things, dive into one thing and really give yourself to it. Because if you do that, you can make a pretty big difference. And he really has. He's got invited to go up to Washington, D.C. to talk at ALS. And so very, very proud of him. And I think that's a lot of these guys, they do have a sense, most of them, that I have a unique platform. And so how can I use that to bring awareness to things that, quite frankly, are probably a lot more important than baseball. And so I think a lot of guys do see that, but both I would say in issues. So ALS, I think there's those kind of big issues. And then what I see, and some players are great with this, there's no cameras, there's nothing around. Mm-hmm. They heard about a kid. I mean, so there was a kid last year, little league kid, very sadly was walking home from a game and got hit by a car. And, fortunately he survived, but was in, children's hospital for many, many weeks. And, I heard about it. I made the team aware of it, and just a number of players who reached out personally and just cared for him. And there's no media around. There's no article being done. They're getting nothing out of that other than, it means a lot when, this kid's favorite baseball player shows up at his bedside. I mean, what that does to lift his spirits. And so I think a lot of these guys get that. It's challenging because they only have so much time, and they do have to it's a very, very demanding thing being a professional athlete. So I know they would all love to do more. They have to turn down 99% of the requests they get. I mean, if you just saw the amount of, DMs these guys get on Instagram, and people are like, why aren't you getting back to me? Why can't you come to my, do the X, Y, Z? Well, because they have to, because they're working. So, and so I think it's challenging, but I do know they try to do as much as they can, and they do take that responsibility seriously. And yeah, I'm always super proud when they're able to connect and really brighten someone's day and touch them in a unique way. It's neat to see how God puts people in position to bring his love and his encouragement. So they really just these players become vehicles to communicate God's love for people. And it's sweet to see that.
And so usually I'm interviewing athletes, coaches, managers, and fans. This is actually only the third clergy member I've had. One of them was Sister Jean of blessed memory from Loyola, Chicago, who just passed away at 106 years old. She was amazing. Had her on a day after the Final Four. Also the chaplain at the priest at Villanova. Amazing guy. And you. So usually I say, is there faith in sports to end? But how would you answer that to the sports fan? Is there faith in sports as we conclude today?
Yes, absolutely. There's faith in sports. These things are not, at odds with each other. Again, I think going back full circle where we started, I think sports is a gift that's been given by God that ultimately is meant to touch something deep in us and act like a sign, actually draw us beyond itself. And so don't make, sports are a good gift. They're a bad God. So don't make them your God. Don't make them an idol. They're good, but they're a good gift. And so let them direct your hearts to the giver of that gift. And may the joy you find in sports lead you to the giver of joy and the true worship you were made for, which is to know the God who made you, who loves you, who's always with you, and who wants to have that relationship with you.
Thank you for writing my benediction for this Saturday, win or lose on Friday night. That was a really beautiful prayer. I love that. Sports is not a God, but it is a gift, and make sure we give glory to the God who gave you the gift. That is an absolutely amazing quote by Pastor Jeff Boettcher, pastor of Christ Church South Philly, chaplain of the Philadelphia Phillies. Let's go Phillies, even though we're a Dodger fan here. Wonderful to have you on Rabbi on the Sidelines. Looking forward to meet you in Philly when you come out here in LA. Sinai Temple's your home. God bless, Pastor. Have a great day.
You too.